Good morning, class. I hope you're having a great day. Man, we've made it almost through the week. I hope that you're able to learn from these videos and that you feel free to ask me any questions that you need. I also hope that you're able to enjoy the day and take some breaks along the way. And okay, so here we go. So today we're going over Unit 8, square roots and exponents. And we're going to be looking at how to solve quadratic equations. So this is day 4. What we're doing today is we're going to solve equations using square roots. Now, if we're using square roots, what do you think that we're trying to undo? What's the opposite of a square root? The opposite operation is squaring, right? So to undo a square root, you square, and to undo square, or x to the power of 2, undo a power of 2, which we call a quadratic, you take the square root. Okay, so yes, if you heard me say the quadratic, that is what you call an equation that has a power of 2, or a function that has a power of 2. Now remember, because it has a power of 2, that means you're going to have two solutions. You're going to have a positive solution and a negative solution. So let's go ahead and look at some problems here. I got some sample worksheets. And b squared equals 4. Remember from yesterday? What number can I square is going to equal 4? Well, if I take the square root of both sides, the square and the square root cancel each other, and I'm just left with b. If I take the square root of the other side, the square root of 4 I know is 2. But remember, squaring something is kind of like an absolute value. Whenever you square something, it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, the answer will be positive, unless it's an imaginary number. So we also have to consider the negative case. If I have negative 2 squared, negative 2 times negative 2 is also going to be positive 4, because a negative times a negative is a positive, right? So whenever we solve a problem with the square root, we're actually solving it with plus or minus the square root, because we're going to have a positive 2 and a negative 2 as our answer. So let's try it over here. X squared equals 49. We're going to take plus minus the square root of both sides. So that's going to give me plus and minus 7, because the square root of 49 is 7. So to get rid of that square, I take plus or minus the square root. Again, I'm repeating myself. On both sides. So we have the positive answer and the negative answer. All right, now there is an exception. There's a couple exceptions. What is the square root of 0? It's 0, right? So can we have a negative 0? No, absolutely not. So if you ever get to the point where you have a square root, you have to figure out what number squared equals 0. You're only going to have one answer. Yay, that's easier. Yep, just one answer is easier. All right, x squared equals 25. What's that answer going to be? It's plus or minus 5. Very good. I spent extra time on this part because this is very essential to the rest of the lesson. The rest of the lesson are things you've done before. We're just going to solve equations. 1-step, 2-step, 3-step equations. The only difference is one of the steps along the way is going to be taking plus and minus a negative. Now, on Sunday, we're going to talk about what happens when you take the square root of a negative. We're going to talk about imaginary answers and extra answers that don't work. All right, but for today, we're going to not worry about it. You're either going to be taking the square root of 0 or the square root of a positive number. Okay, so this is a two-step equation. First, we have to get x squared by itself. So I'm going to go back to our notes. So the question is, how do we solve these are called quadratic. Quadratic, if you think of quad, that means 4, and quadratic means you have a square in it. How many sides does a square have? A square has 4 sides. Quad means 4, so quadratic means you have a square in it. So how do you solve a quadratic equation? First, with the method that we're doing today, using square roots, first you're going to get the variable squared by itself. Oops. I'm just saying x generically. Get the variable, the x squared, by itself. We're going to solve for x squared on one side of the equation. Now, second, next thing you're going to do is you're going to take plus and minus square root. Oops, not square root. The square root. Oof, I don't want that. I want a square root instead. And then the third thing, which we're not actually going to do today, is then go ahead and finish whatever is inside the square. So if the x is in parentheses, then after you take the square root, then you would have to add or subtract, multiply or divide to get the variable by itself. All right, so let's go ahead and do a few more examples and we'll call this a day. At least for the video. All right, so let's go ahead and solve for x here. So first thing we got to do is add 5 to both sides so we can get the x squared by itself, right? All right, 5 minus 5, boom, it's gone. X squared on the left side and 64 on the right side. Hey, good news, 64 is a perfect square. So what is the square root of 64? It's 8. So we're going to do plus and minus the square root. So x equals plus and minus 8. Easy breezy? All right. Well, this one, oh, I have a negative. Can a square root be negative? Uh-oh. But you know what? It's going to be okay because we haven't solved for m squared yet. So let's add 10 to both sides. And then we're going to add 10 to the other side. Whew, I'm not really good with this. Okay, so negative 10, negative 1 plus 10 is, what's that going to give us? Negative 1 plus 10 gives us 9. Okay? And then we have the m squared on the other side. Okay, how do we get rid of the squared? Plus or minus the square root. So the answer is going to be plus and minus 3. Because the square root of 9 is 3. All right. Okay, now this one, we're adding 4, so we're going to have to subtract it, and we end up with 32. I'm not going to write the rest of the equation down. Actually, let me do this. Let me change color. I kind of like this purple color. It's pretty nice. Okay, so I'm subtracting 4, so that's going to turn that into 32 on the other side. To get rid of that, I'm going to take plus or minus the square root. So that means it's going to be plus or minus the square root of 34. Uh-oh. I mean plus or minus the square root of 32. Uh-oh, 32 is not a perfect square, is it? So what do we have to do? We're going to simplify it. You can estimate or simplify. Today I want you guys to just practice simplifying. Okay? So 32, I know I can divide it by 2, and that gives me 16. Oh, 16. I know what the square root of 16 is. It's 4. So we can pull that out. So our two answers ended up being plus and minus 4. That extra 2 doesn't have a pair, so it's got to stay in there, times the square root of 2. Okay? So if it ends up not being a perfect square, go ahead and simplify the square root. All right, one last thing. Ready? Okay, so I think you guys know how to multiply and divide. This is going to be the same thing. We're just multiplying and dividing. We're going to deal with this tomorrow. But just make sure that you multiply or divide first, or add or subtract first before you take the square root. Now, you're going to be given a couple of problems where it's 2 steps, where you're going to have to multiply and divide and add and subtract all in the same problem. So let me give you an example. Whoops. There we go. Let's say I have 2x squared minus 4 equals 18. Okay, it's just like we do. Just it's going to be a 2-step equation before you square root. So really it's a 3-step equation. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add 4 to both sides, right? That gets rid of it there. So plus 4, which gives us 22. Okay. And then we're going to divide by 2. See, I'm kind of cheating here. 22 divided by 2 is 11, because the opposite of multiplying is dividing, so that's how we get rid of that. So 11 equals x squared. Is that a perfect square? Is 11 a perfect square? No. So we're going to take plus and minus the square root of 11. 11's prime, so there's no way to simplify it. So the answer is the square root of 11 and the negative square root of 11. Hope you enjoyed today's video. You guys have a great day. Oh, joke of the day. This one's kind of bad. I apologize. What do you call it when cows like to dance? It's a milkshake. Ha 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 ha. All right. Have a great day.